I am so very clever because you're actually staring at a mirror, and in a moment I am going to appear before your very eyes, and I'm actually sitting behind where I've got the camera. But first you might be able to hear the racket from my little kettle, which is busy bubbling away, because it is going to provide me with, where are we, a Tetley tea, which is just what the doctor ordered. I want to tell you about the first day of my whistle-stop Gloucester tour. In fact, we'll start with the journey. So, as you know, I finished work at 5 o'clock in the evening, and I was actually picked up by my parents and taken back to Markenfield, because I had to do two things. I had to change, not fancy doing a 5 to 6 hour journey in my work clothes, to be totally honest with you, and secondly, I had to prepare my aviary for a couple of days without me. This is about the maximum it can go without us worrying that we're going to lose somebody. Are you ready for this? Moment of truth. All being well, I have appeared before your very eyes. I do apologise if half my face is missing or something like that. That'll be because I angled the camera wrong, but I think I'm okay. So anyway, I was stood at about 7 o'clock outside Markenfield, and I decided I would do an introductory video, which is in fact online. And things did not go according to plan, because the camera was not focusing when it was recording, which was weird because there's no way of allowing it to focus manually. It does it automatically. And I was a little bit concerned about that. You know, turn it off, turn it on. Still had the same problem. Took the battery pack out and the memory card, changed that. Still exactly the same problem. So I was a little bit concerned. But anyway, nothing I could do. We couldn't go into town and buy a new one because all the shops would be shut, and it was too late. We were off on tour. So off we went. My family was accompanying me for the first day. There were 2 loads going down. A car with my sister, and me, my nan and my parents, and they'd actually hired a larger car because it was a very long journey, and it was lovely. It was absolutely fantastic. I did enjoy the journey. I knew I would enjoy the journey anyway. I'd got provisions to stop me from feeling car sick, so I knew I wasn't going to have any particular problems, but it was a nice thought anyway. So off we went, and we had no problems. We used my father's new sat-nav, which meant that we got to Gloucester no problem, got to the hotel no problem. There weren't any major roadworks or anything like that. A couple of areas of the motorway were reduced in speed, 50 miles an hour, but that was about it. We stopped by chance, in fact, at one of the services on the way. And it just so happened that my sister, who had been travelling separately and had left slightly before us, had chosen exactly the same motorway services to stop at. We chose the services to stop at because my mother suddenly fancied a McDonald's, and it was one with a bridge, and unfortunately McDonald's was on the other side of this bridge over the motorway, and that was shut for repairs or something, but we didn't realise that until after we'd stopped. And by that time we'd come across my sister's car in the car park, and lo and behold they were in Burger King or Costa or something like that, so we decided, well, we'd get a Subway, which was nice. Subway Club, I always go for a Subway Club, I do like it. Lots and lots of meat, foot long, of course. So we did that, and then off we went, and we all arrived, I think, at about 11:30-ish in the evening, that Thursday evening. Now, the journey had been fine, but then we started to have issues. So we all arrived, and we started by getting the rooms sorted out. There were 2 rooms under Duff, obviously me and my parents' room, and we were all spread out throughout the hotel, which was interesting. I think my sister was on the top level, my parents and my nan were above me, and I was on 1. And so there was a little bit of an issue with sorting out which room belonged to me and which room belonged to them in terms of the pass cards, which I could tell was irritating my father somewhat. Anyway, we got our pass cards, and because of course then we had another room booked in a different name for my nan, and of course my sister had yet another thing, so there was 4 rooms, 2 under the same name. Anyway, first problem, my sister had brought along her son, who is not very old, still in a cot, and she'd asked for a cot to be placed in the room so that the child had somewhere to sleep, and naturally they got up there and there was no cot. So they had to sort that out with the receptionist. And then my parents went to their room, I went to my room, no problem there. My nan had a special room because obviously being 91 she wanted to be absolutely sure that all the commodities were fine, you know, she had plenty of space. So I don't think it was a disabled room, but it was a special access room or something. Anyway, bizarre as this sounds, somebody had stolen the toilet seat. Now, when I went back to reception, and I was staggered to see my parents, my nan, and my sister still there, because obviously they'd come down and got their complaints or whatever. A cot was found for my sister, so that sorted that out. But there was an issue with my grandmother's toilet. The toilet seat was absent. Most peculiar, because when I first heard that from my father I thought, does he mean that there's a special sort of seat that maybe raises the toilets, because they are quite low to the ground in this hotel, to make it easier for my nan to sit on. No, he meant the actual toilet seat was not there. It was missing. Don't ask me who steals toilet seats from Travelodge hotels, because I don't know. But I went up in the lift with him, and it was obvious that this toilet seat was not there. And more to the point, there was only one lady on. She barely spoke a word of English. And it was quite obvious that she had no idea what had happened to this toilet seat at all, or where to get another toilet seat from. So I said, look, why don't they take my toilet seat, because I'm not going to sit down on the toilet for a day, for that night, because that's the only night that my parents were staying. So, anyway, we were about to do that when the receptionist finally found a toilet seat from somewhere. Don't ask me where. I don't know if she went into another room and took one off or what, but she found another toilet seat, and so they were busy at about midnight screwing this toilet seat onto my grandmother's room, that toilet. The good news is that they agreed to refund the cost of her room, you know, and rightly so. You know, this isn't Travelodge Hotel's fault exactly. I mean, you could argue that they should have checked, perhaps, that there was a toilet seat on the toilet, but you know, let's be honest, somebody had obviously stolen it or removed it for some reason. You know, there was no tape to say that the toilet was broken. It looked like it had been stolen. So, you know, they did very well. They replaced the toilet seat and everything was fine. They did all they could. But it was one of those things which after, you know, a day of work and then, you know, 6 hours travel, very late at night, sleep deprived, little bit hungry, it was horrendous. So, you know, there we are. I was left in my room at about 12:30 when I went to try and see if my camera was okay, and this time when I turned it on, it just wouldn't register a picture at all. It was bringing up error messages, it was broken, it just was not working. I couldn't view anything, I couldn't record anything, take pictures, I couldn't play anything back. It had died, and I thought to myself, now what on earth do I do? Because there's not really a lot of point in doing this if I don't have a video or some means of being able to record it. And I just wonder if you're still going. Are you still going? You are still going, that's fantastic. Nearly finished with this. So I made up my mind, look, I had with me the rest of the windfall money which I had given to my mother for half of the greenhouse that was going to be at the allotment, and she had decided that we weren't going to do that anymore. So that money had been returned to me and seemed to be a good, you know, logical place to spend it, you know, on my Gloucester tour. That was probably enough to buy a camera of the same price that I had before. The problem was that I needed it, and I needed it to be charged and ready to go by the next day. Thankfully, the wedding was in the afternoon, and so, you know, I vowed to get up early and go hunt for the nearest Argos, and with that I went to bed. You know, we were in Gloucester, but it had been a rocky start.